Hello, Tom here, and welcome back to another product test video with Cosclay by Monster Makers, the people that bring you monster clay. So I thought this time, instead of just messing around with the clay, I thought I'd actually try and sculpt something as I would normally. So I'm going to start off just by getting a very basic head form going. I'm not using any reference, so I'm just going to see what comes out really. This is just a ball of tin foil, which I've laid the clay over the top of. I'm using about, I'd say, 1/2 centimetre thickness on top of the ball of aluminium foil, just as a basis to get going. So the first thing that I notice about the clay, obviously as I said in the last video, is it's very soft, and the good thing about that is it's very easy to condition. I remember when I used to work with Sculpey Firm and even just regular Sculpey, it can give you a real finger ache or even arm ache from trying to get the clay soft enough by working it with your fingers to actually sculpt with. Now, that's one benefit I can already see from this, is it's super easy to get it warmed up in your hands and to get it to a really nice soft consistency. So it's going to be good for speed sculpting, getting a concept together really quickly. I'm slightly concerned, however, that when it comes to the detail stages, it's not going to be as easy to deal with. So as you can see, I've got a very basic shape, looking quite gorilla-like at the moment, but I'm just going to keep going and playing around with the clay, seeing how it's smooth, seeing how it bonds when you stick a new piece on, and so far I'm liking it. It seems to be really easy to push around. It's not sticky, too sticky at least, so it doesn't stick to your fingers. One thing I have noticed, look, is the amount of oil that this is leaving behind on the chipboard that I'm using as a base here. Now this is not the clay that I left under paper towel for 2 days to absorb some of the moisture from it. This is fresh out of the pack that I was sent. Now I have spoken to Monster Makers about it, and they are aware that this grade was particularly soft when they made it. And I know that since then they've also produced an extra firm version, which is going to be great. So I have some eyes lying around that I've been meaning to use for a while. I've got these kind of human-y eyes and some more reptilian looking eyes. So I decided on the human-y kind of eyes, although I don't really want this to be a human as such, not an average human at least, maybe some kind of mutant, or I don't know, we'll see what comes out. Maybe some kind of troll. It's looking a bit weird. A lot of my sculpts do look weird until quite near the end. I'm sure everybody says that. But, you know, I'm not too concerned about the level of sculpting ability in this video. I'm not making anything to sell or for my portfolio necessarily. This is just to test the clay out. So one tool that I use more than anything is a rake tool like this one. And this was I made this myself using a bass guitar string and sticking it inside some aluminium tubing. For me to be able to work with a clay on a regular basis, I need to be able to rake it. And one of the main problems I have, or one of the main dislikes I have for Super Sculpey, is that when you try and rake it, it gets very crumbly, and sometimes you pull off big chunks of clay if it's not all the same temperature and the same level of condition as you're working on it. So I was very pleased when I started raking this Cosclay here to find that it moves around the surface a lot like oil-based clays. It reminds me slightly of maybe a medium grade monster clay. When you start raking it, it smooths itself instead of coming off in little blobs and chips and boogies. It smooths itself quite nicely together. So that's definitely a benefit for me. I'm very conscious of the fact that I know it's going to be flexible after I've baked it, or at least some parts of it will be. The solid masses won't be, as I found out in my last video on this clay. If you bake a solid lump, it's pretty tough, like any other polymer clay. So I'm trying to think of a way in this sculpt that I can show off, or at least utilize the flexibility aspect of it. Not quite sure what yet. I might make some hair, kind of tufts of hair, or maybe some accessories to go on him. I'm not sure yet. So that's where I'm up to. Kind of creased the nose and pushed it up a bit. So from the profile, I'm really liking the profile of it actually, more than the front-on view. He's got a very weird kind of look to him. So I've put some ears on. Obviously they're too big, but I kind of like it. I don't know why. Kind of looks kind of ratty. And obviously I've pushed some teeth in there now as well, just the basic shape of some teeth at least. And so far I'm really liking the way that you can get detail out of it. I was quite concerned that it would be, because it's so soft, that it would be quite difficult to work with tools. I'm now going to try some 99.9% alcohol on a paintbrush. And this is, if you're a digital sculptor, this is the same thing as, well, for me at least, it feels the same as when you hold down spacebar or when you use the smooth brush in ZBrush, for example. So you'd carve in your shapes and then you'd go over it with the alcohol with the brush, and it kind of just softens the edges, takes everything down a peg or two. So far, working the alcohol into the surface, it feels more or less exactly the same as Super Sculpey would, or the same as any other clay would as you use some kind of thinner on the surface. It's nice, I like the way it smooths. I was worried that because it's quite soft, I thought the alcohol might make it really mushy really quickly, but it seems to just be affecting the very top layer of the clay, and then evaporating quickly and leaving the clay underneath to be firm still, or at least as firm as the clay is usually. So I'm just going to brush over the entire sculpt and then try and get some more finer details and some textures into it. Okay, so I've gone over the entire thing with the alcohol now and tried to smooth out the surface as much as possible. I know it's looking a bit weird still, the ears are obviously too big, but generally I'm liking how well it smooths out. I'm liking how easy it is to lay on and how quickly it is to work with. It is picking up a lot of dirt and debris from my workspace. You can see here on the block it's got a bit of dirt, and on the top of the lip there's some of the chipboard that has broken away and got stuck in the clay, but it's the same as any other polymer clay really. You have to be cleaner than with oil clay when you're working with it. So that's where I'm up to so far. I'm going to carry on working on it for a while before we get it baked up. I've added a few little spots now and a bit more detail. Started to go in and add a few wrinkles around the nose and the edge of the eyes. I'm really liking how easy it is to lay in a piece of detail and then quickly brush over it with the alcohol. It smooths things out really nicely. And it's really easy to readjust the sculpt when you're working on it. Like now, for example, if I wanted to push the nose up or bring the lips down, I could do that quite easily without ruining the rest of it. So I removed the ears. They were far too big. I'm going to cut them down and reapply them. Although I don't think I'm going to actually finish the ears today in this video, because it's one of the things that I find the most difficult, and I need a solid reference, and it takes me a while. So I'm going to stick them on more as placeholders than anything, just to give the shape of the head. But I'm not going to go into any more detail on the ears really than that. I've added a few wrinkles to the lips. As I say, I've added a few spots and pimples, and I'm really just going in slowly, reshaping the eyes a little bit, reshaping the mouth, and I'm really liking the way it's working. Okay, so even more wrinkles now. I'll try and get in a bit closer there, and you can see I've really started to dig in some fine lines around the eyes, some deeper wrinkles, and it's really nice, especially if you've already laid down a layer of the alcohol and blended it in a little bit, because it softens the surface, so you can really get some smooth wrinkles and then just tap them down to soften them with your finger, which is quite nice. So one thing that I'm loving the most about this clay is how well the tools work with it. Especially this loop tool that I've got here. It glides through really nicely, and I'm thinking now about adding some kind of accessory, and I'm thinking maybe to put some kind of leather strap over the face. Not really sure why, but I'd quite like to see how easy it is to lay extra pieces on top of the clay, and to see if I can get some kind of tension effect into the skin, as if the band is being pulled tight around it. Not sure how it's going to go, but we will try. So as I said, this loop tool is really nice just for some deeper wrinkles, some creases in the skin. So I'm just going over again, defining, refining, and then hitting it with the alcohol again on the brush just to smooth things down. So I rolled out a long sausage, and I'm going to flatten it out, try and get it equal thickness as you press. And then once you've got it to the length that you want, which is about there, then we need to smooth the surface. So dip your finger in the alcohol and just run your finger along the surface, just smoothing it out. It smooths really well with alcohol, this. I can see it being really nice to get some long, especially with clothing, to get some smooth surfaces. I'm not quite sure about hard surfaces. It's a bit soft for me to be doing that, but I'm sure some people will be able to do it. So I'm just going to run a tool along the edge just to try and straighten up and tidy up some of those edges that are a bit wobbly. Okay, so I've put the straps, 2 straps over his face. As I said, I just wanted to see how it works. I've kind of squashed the nose up to the side, the nostril, to try and give the effect that the leather strap is pulling it, or pressing it up, sorry. And now I'm just going over the alcohol with the alcohol on my finger again, try and smooth the strap down without squashing it to the face too much. And I can always go along the edge with the tool and lift it back up again in a minute. It sticks really nicely to itself, so once you've laid it down, it's not slipping and sliding around. Even with the alcohol underneath, it seems to stick quite nicely. And actually blending and smoothing with your finger works quite well in general. Alright, I've added a few little tufts of hair, some from the chin and some from the top of his head. I've added a few more wrinkles, I've added some eyebrows, I've added some facial hair up on his lip, and generally just going around and adding any little finer details that I want at this stage. It's almost ready, I think, to bake. I just think, I don't know, I'm considering even having tentacles coming out of his nose and his ears, just because I want something that's flexible. And I think that is the danger for me with this clay right now, is that I'm looking for ways to use it instead of it being something that I go to use for a certain thing, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to try and forget about the flexibility of it for now and just start working on this a bit more. I'm going to add some pores around the nose. I'm going to go in and add some more facial detail, some more texture, and see how lifelike I can get this skin to look. So I've gone over the whole thing now, added very pitted skin using a stylus tool, different size stylus tools. I've added some crossover lines, some deeper wrinkles, and now I'm just going to soften all that back down again with some more alcohol on a brush. But this time I'm going to actually start jabbing the brush into the surface of the clay instead of smoothing, just so I can really give a rough texture to the skin and give it some life, really, more than anything. So really jabbing my brush in there now. I might even change brushes to a more stiff one in a minute. Alright, so that's with all the texture kind of softened out a bit. You can see I've added a bit of texture to the leather. I've refined the teeth and the lips a little bit more. He's got some hair, he's got some eyebrows. His eyes are more or less alright, I guess. The ears are still the same. As I said, I'm not going to waste any time trying to get the ears right for now. So yeah, I think it's almost ready to bake. I'm going to bake it as I would any other polymer clay and ignore the instructions completely and bake it at about 100 degrees for about an hour, starting in a cool oven and letting the oven warm up with the clay inside, and then after the hour turn the oven off and leave the sculpt inside until the oven is completely cool. And one final thing before I bake it is I just decided to add some bigger teeth on the front there. I think as he looks a bit ratty anyway, I think if we give him some humanized rat teeth at the front, we can at least develop the character slightly more than he is already. Alright, so I'm going to stick it in the oven now and we will see how it bakes, and I'll see you soon. Alright, it's completely cooled down now, and it's very much the same. The hair is the only real part that's still flexible. The nose is slightly, it's a little bit of give to it, but I think it's going to be, and the lips as well move slightly. It's just a good quality polymer clay. If I could get a firmer version of it, I'd definitely use it over Super Sculpey Firm. I actually really like the colour to it. It's a really nice flesh tone. Again, because this was a product sample, I'm not sure what this colour would be called when it's released. You can see a bit of the chipboard stuck in it there. But yeah, I really like the colour, and I think what I'm going to do is, for another video, I'm going to get the airbrush out and some acrylic inks and try and paint this up and see how realistic I can get the flesh looking. use some different techniques on painting it and see how it takes the paint. But for this video, I think that is going to be the end. It's been enjoyable. As I said, I'm not really a fan of polymer clay on an everyday basis. I much prefer the oil clays like Monster Clay and Chavant. But if I was using a polymer clay, this is one of the better ones I've tried. On par, I would say, if not better than Super Sculpey. But as I said, I think this is going to be best for me for things like weapons, hair, clothing, tails, things like that. Parts that would stick out of a figure or a piece that normally would be too brittle or too easily broken. So I think that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you again in the next video. Goodbye.